Hello there. Welcome back to my continuing series on World Government UFO Disclosure. Today's installment comes to you courtesy of India, the subcontinent. I am Keith, and sit tight here. I've got an interesting set of data information for you here coming from India in regards to their participation in the ufology disclosure effort. First, a few fun facts about India. Current population is roughly about 1.35 billion people. That represents 17% of the world's population. Now, the India government is highly democratic. It's had a very contentious beginning with their separation from the British rule back in the 20th century. So there's very contentious interpolitical party competition, so to speak, between the ruling and wannabe ruling parties. Now, that's translated generally into the ufology landscape in terms of questioning and debating about current and future full disclosure efforts, and I'll touch on that as we go through and towards the end of my talk here today. So. I'll start off with the history. India does have a very rich history, amongst the richest and most documented going back into ancient times. With the ancient Veda texts, the Vayamanika Shastras, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayanas depict many stories of ships that are commonly called Vimanas. And translated, where again, many stories talk of famous battles amongst aeronautics and military siege engines, which were also part of the stories and developments written about in terms of, shall I say, schematics. I mean, there are some decoded stories and information here that basically serve as blueprints and architecturally for construction of at least some of the equipment apparatus that would go into constituting a powered ship like a Vimana and whatnot. So the translation is that there's a very rich history through the Veda texts in terms of all things anomalous and possibly extraterrestrial. There are also cave paintings and other rock communications that have been discovered over the centuries, drawings, particularly in the Bastar region, where depictions of humanoid figures, and then also what has been debated to be alien pictures or depictions of aliens and what look like spacecraft. So, again, very rich history going back, tens of thousands of years. In more modern times, many sightings, again, both around civilian sources and involving the Indian military. I'm sorry. In March 15th of 1951 in New Delhi, a flying club there witnessed a cigar-shaped object that was over 100 feet long flying over and around their airport, again displaying the typical classical anomalous aircraft characteristics of instant acceleration, turning on 90-degree angles, slowing down, stopping, hovering in midair, and whatnot. In 1952, again, the New Delhi airport was another event, sighting time where discs and cigar-shaped objects, once again, were seen displaying the same flight characteristics as what happened a year earlier. Now, the first flap, and as I mentioned, this is in the Ladakh region in northern India, there's a lot of military installations around that particular area. Now, these reports, the flap in February to April of 1968. Now, come from reports from, ironically, the United States Central Intelligence Agency, where Indian military bases were inundated with, again, disc-shaped objects, cigar-shaped objects, which would, again, display the unusual flight characteristics, at least to many human beings, where they were again, stopping, hovering. A couple of them did land, according to some reports from the CIA. Now, I had mentioned the Ladakh region was is very popular. There's been many flaps there. Again, as we fast forward into 2004, in the summer and autumn, August through October, military and there were scientists actually studying, archaeologists and biologists actually in the region doing their own independent studies. And this flap involved more than 100 different sightings, and also, too, witnessing of a creature who was described to be amongst the scientists and the Indian military to be about 4 feet tall and kind of wandering around on the ground, doing some exploring of their own or whatnot. So, very curious in terms of that this was military and scientific uh, witnesses to this particular flap of events. So, some other some other incidents of a more recent nature in India. Again, in Ladakh in 2013, there was actually another flap after the 2004 one, about 9 years later, in which over 200 sightings were actually witnessed. In Rishikesh in 2013, residents, indigenous people, and villagers and military witnessed a craft that hovered, landed briefly, took off again, hovered, then took off into the sky, and at the end, they heard and witnessed and saw a large crack in the sky where the sky opened up and this ship basically disappeared right into the area where that particular, it wasn't an explosion, it was just a crack in the air, kind of like an opening or a portal, and the ship just shot through it. Again, in 2013, in the Shakathara region, a cone-shaped object was actually observed by the Indian police and military. And again, in Kolkata and West Bengal area, videos where discs and triangles were actually filmed and are in the archives. In 2015, Ratnagurli, uh, another sighting, kind of a small flap. There was sightings over a few days in that particular region of more disc-shaped type objects. And again, later on in that year, 2015, in the Kanagal village, a craft actually landed, according to witnesses, and what became what's known as a CE3 and 4 event, where there was actual contact, not an abduction, but actual contact with the creatures or occupants of the particular craft. In 2016, in the Barmer region, this was a very iconic incident where military Air Force they were actually shot down by an unidentified aerial object. The Indian Air Force pilots, his plane was actually, once he gave pursuit, was actually shot down by this craft, or at least injured to where he had to make an emergency landing. So, again, very rich and extensive history from our contributors over in India. So, let me morph into discussion here. I'll lay out some contributors to the Indian ufology efforts. Um, MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, does have a presence and an active chapter in India. Kenneth Pfeiffer is the current director of MUFON India, and as you'll see up here on the screen, I'll give you his email address, and then in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you some website addresses for various organizations in India that within the ufology community. I also inform you that these websites are going to be listed on my Facebook page, The Humaniverse. So please go over to The Humaniverse and you can tap into the resources and knowledge that India actually contributes to the ufology community. So excuse me, Kenneth Pfeiffer is the MUFON India. New Discoveries, his email, newdiscoveries51@gmail.com. Other contributors include the India Space Research Organization, or acronym ISRO. This is the India equivalent of the US's NASA. Very, very seminal. And again, India's government participation, they're very centralized. So record keeping, not many agencies involved in the ufology subject. Government controlled. Again, they could probably be put in the category to where more could be disclosed. There's knowledge and secrets that the Indian government needs to disclose to help become more transparent. So they're not as completely transparent as maybe some other governments, world governments, tend to be. So the India Space Research Organization, ISRO, and they do have their own website, and as I'm going to give it to you here, isro.gov.in for India. They currently employ over 20,000 employees, and their annual operating budget is well over $6 billion, because India has launched rockets into orbit. So they're part of the space club, so to speak, amongst humankind. Now, the ISRO does have, according to reports from employees, former employees, and other ufologists, elements of the U.S.'s Area 51. And by that, I mean secret sections controlled in part by the India government authorities, military, but also by the United Nations Security Council. And what that means is that these secret sections must contain some kind of futuristic, either human technology or technology that was retrieved of an origin outside of humankind, is the way that I'll put it for today. So the UN Security Council and the ISRO does have secret sections which are forbidden to be entered by most people, except for those with the, quote, proper clearance, kind of acting in a lot of cases like our Area 51. And that's just an example of where the fingers are being pointed at the India government to want to promote more disclosure. Now, there is other publications and clubs, whatnot. UFO Magazine India was created in January of 2016 by Hitesh Yadav. And he has maintained this UFO Magazine India is available. It's published, I believe, quarterly. And it's all the past issues are available actually for sale at Amazon. Other booksellers, Amazon seems to be the main one that I've explored and discovered, at least anyway. So UFO Magazine India basically gives you a history, more richer and more detailed history of all things ufology in India. One other website that I'll mention, the ufoverse.com, which is actually in conjunction with UFO Magazine. That is the ufoverse.com. So now I'll move into the government involvement, the government agencies that have been a part of the India UFO disclosure effort. Again, as I mentioned, the India Space Research Organization, ISRO, is very important. They're the India equivalent of the US's NASA. The India Army Air Force. The Indo-Tibetan Border Police is involved because this particular jurisdiction is along the northern part of India, who shares borders with Tibet and China and whatnot. So the Indo-Tibetan police force, border police, have been involved in sightings, reports, and a little bit of dissemination of information. Also, two contributions from the India Astronomical Observatories, the conglomerate consortium, the National Technical Research Organization, an organization called 14 Corps, the Defense Research Development Organization, and the Indian Astrobiology Research Foundation, or IARF. They work in conjunction with the Indian Space Research Organization in terms of ufology, and also, too, they are recently involved in some studies more of a SETI nature, the U.S.'s search for extraterrestrial intelligence. This is the Indian Astrobiology Research Foundation. So, uh, as you've probably gotten a flavor through my talk here, the disclosure landscape um, is highly reluctant in terms of the India government's participation and a willingness to be transparent. They could be more transparent. Now, again, the India Research Space Research Organization, is very, very important in terms of disclosure and any studies that are conducted. The ISRO was formed in 1969, and again, as I mentioned recently, India has joined the space club, so to speak, of those human nations that have achieved a presence in space and in orbit and whatnot. So, I'll give you a statement here, just coming up in a few seconds as I wrap up my talk here on India. Um, Other disclosure efforts just recently in July of 2021, actually UFO Day, July the 2nd of 2021, the Center of Excellence for UFOs, its acronym is ICEW. This organization was created by Pushkar Vaida, who is the current head of the ICEW. And in conjunction with the Indian Astrobiology Research Foundation, this organization works like the MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And what I mean by that is that they're more of a boots on the ground. They take in new reports of sightings and witness case studies from the public, and they portion out investigators to do again case studies, interviews, research, and whatnot. So they do share a lot of similarities with the MUFON organization, but they do operate independently of, and as I mentioned before, the Mutual UFO Network does have a chapter in India. So both of these organizations work in conjunction with each other. So as I conclude my talk here on India, the best way to summarize their government's participation and the highly political, volatile nature of their democratic government, I'll read an excerpt from an article that I discovered back a few months ago in terms of discussing India's government disclosure efforts. It says the present debate, military officials and politicians have confessed the fact that India has been contacted. India has been told the rules of the universe. And that statement basically means it's an admittance by, quote, military officials, undisclosed as to their identity, that India has been one of the countries, because of its nature as being a member of the Space Club, that allegedly India has been contacted by some kind of extraterrestrial intelligence representatives or whatever. But my point here is just to describe the nature of the India government's efforts. This last statement, I haven't been able to verify it with any data or identities or anything yet. So I just want to stick to the statement of the current status of the India government's participation in UFO disclosure efforts. This article goes on to say that the present debate is on whether to keep it secret, and keeping it secret means all of its information about UFOs, ETs, experiencers, UFO, UAP aircraft, things like that. The debate is on whether to keep it secret, like other countries are doing, or in custom of a total see-through society, come out and tell the truth. India is so unfastened and democratic, it is very hard to keep a secret for long. The major anxiety of the government today is dissimilar to that of other countries. It will be very difficult to keep it secret for an extensive period of time. If the information comes out through unauthorized channels, and what that means is if information comes out from other than India government official channels, such as ufology or international channels or whatnot, if the information comes out through those unauthorized channels first, and then the authorities are pressed against the wall to confess, two bad things can happen. First, it can actually cause a panic in the country as well as the world. So there's the panic factor. Second, the way the India politics is run, the ruling party will be thrown out of power in no time. The current hurry of world leaders to India is extraordinary. Starting from Russian President Putin to major senators from America have visited or are preparing to visit India to discuss these topics. The European Union is in deep conversation with India on cooperation. So basically, that statement summarizes in probably about the best way that that I can say the India government, while it is very democratic, is also very contentious and very competitive with each other. So the questions raised: does this become a race by the India government in whatever party is in power at the time to be the ones credited with the disclosures? Or are they willing to wait until maybe the time where some unauthorized, other than government authority makes the disclosures? And again, whether that's through the ufology community, through science, through a combination, or through international governments. In other words, is it a race to see who's going to be able to stand on the podium, make the announcements, and get the credit? So, it seems to me, in conclusion, a very contentious and competitive government situation in the part of India. So we'll stay tuned as in the near future. I'm sure many events are going to play out to where it's generally agreed we're closer to ultimate disclosure and what I call enduring global acknowledgement, EGA, than we ever have before in our history. So the governments may be in a jockeying position with each other to want to be the first to actually do that, or is there going to be a United Nations effort of some sort to actually make those disclosures? So stay tuned. But with that, I'll wrap up this analysis of the India government ufology situation. Thanks for tuning in again. I'm Keith, and again, if you want website information, go onto my Facebook page, The Humaniverse, and you can look up and learn about all things India and ufology. Thanks, take care, we'll see you next time real soon. Bye now.